Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking into a case that's really captivated a lot of people. Um, you know, the unsolved murder of JonBenét Ramsey.
It's one of those cases that just grabs you.
Right. It's both fascinating and heartbreaking, and it's a case that's been in the public eye for
Oh,
decades.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. This happened back in 1996, and we're still talking about it.
Exactly. And it's still unsolved. So we're going to be exploring it together, peeling back the layers of this enduring enigma,
Yeah.
right? Trying to see what we can learn from it.
And you know what I find particularly intriguing? The questions this case raises about the very nature of truth itself. How can we sort through all the speculation and the media frenzy to try and figure out what really happened? It's tough.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that's what we're going to be tackling in this deep dive. We're going to be using an article from Investor as our main source. It's called The Unsolved Mystery of JonBenét Ramsey's Murder, a three-part series.
It's a good one, really digs deep.
It does. And so we're going to unpack some of the most compelling details with you.
Should be quite the ride.
So picture this. It's Christmas night, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. The Ramsey family, seemingly picture perfect, gets home from a holiday gathering. But the next morning, their world is shattered.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. To wake up on Christmas morning and discover your child is missing.
And not just missing, there's a ransom note.
Demanding $118,000.
Yeah. And the note says they can't contact the police. The weight of that situation.
Unthinkable.
The ransom note itself is one of the most perplexing pieces of this puzzle. That amount, $118,000, it's oddly specific.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Like, is it a reference to something only someone close to the family would know?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, ransom notes can be a real window into the mind of the perpetrator. You can see their level of planning, maybe even their potential relationship to the victim.
Right, right. And in this case, that specific amount, along with the instruction to not call the police, it just raises so many questions.
It does make you think maybe it was someone familiar with the family's finances, or maybe someone who wanted to control the situation right from the beginning.
Okay, so here's where things take a really, really devastating turn.
Yeah.
Despite the ransom note's warnings, the Ramseys do contact the police.
I can't imagine the pressure they must have been under.
Hours later, John Ramsey makes a horrific discovery in their basement. JonBenét's body.
Oh, God.
It's just awful. Her mouth was taped, she was bound, and the autopsy showed she'd been strangled.
And she had a skull fracture.
Right. And to make matters worse, the initial investigation was botched.
Oh, yeah, big time. The crime scene, which is absolutely crucial to any investigation, was totally compromised.
Wait, compromise? What does that mean? Like, how did that happen?
Well, think of a crime scene like a giant, super complicated puzzle.
Okay, yeah.
Every single piece of evidence is a vital clue. It helps investigators piece together what happened. But when a crime scene is compromised, it's like someone just comes in and dumps a bucket of water all over that puzzle.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's a great analogy.
It blurs everything, makes it almost impossible to see the complete picture. And in the Ramsey case, well, they let friends and family walk through the house. Even members of the media were there.
Seriously.
That means potential contamination of evidence. It probably had a disastrous impact on the whole investigation.
It's scary to think that key evidence could have been lost or contaminated right from the start.
Exactly. And those initial mistakes cast a huge shadow over the whole case. It's impossible to know what evidence might have been lost or messed with, you know?
Yeah.
And that uncertainty has just fueled all kinds of speculation and debate for years and years.
So we have this super complex crime scene, a bizarre ransom note, and a media frenzy that just explodes almost immediately. How did all that media coverage, especially back then, pre-social media, how did that affect the investigation and public perception?
Well, you got to think about the context. This was before social media, but 24-hour cable news was really taking off.
Yeah.
The Ramseys, whether they were guilty or innocent, were put under a microscope unlike anything we'd seen before.
It must have been overwhelming.
And that relentless media attention, it had to impact the investigation, don't you think? It definitely shaped public opinion and probably made it much harder for the family to even grieve.
It's hard to even imagine the pressure the investigators must have been under, with all those cameras in their faces and reporters hounding them for information.
The media can be a double-edged sword, you know? On the one hand, it can raise awareness and sometimes even generate leads. But on the other hand, it creates this intense pressure on law enforcement.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Sometimes it leads to rushed judgments or tunnel vision, and all the constant speculation, sometimes even sensationalism, it can really sway public opinion. Makes it hard to separate fact from fiction.
And in this case, the media coverage was just relentless.
Yeah.
Every detail, every new theory, it was plastered all over the headlines and debated endlessly on TV. It's no wonder people formed such strong opinions about the case, even without all the facts.
Exactly. That's the real danger of media saturation, especially in a case that captures the public's imagination like this one did.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the narrative and forget that everyone is innocent until proven guilty.
Right, and that includes the victim's family.
It's a good reminder that we all need to be careful consumers of information, especially in today's world of instant news and all the stuff that goes viral.
It's wild to think about, isn't it? I mean, it's been decades since that Christmas night, and the JonBenét Ramsey case is still unsolved.
I know, right? It really makes you think about how some mysteries just linger. Despite all our efforts to figure them out, it's unsettling, to say the least.
Absolutely. So, where do we even begin? What are the big questions that are still hanging out there? What keeps people, even today, so captivated by this case?
Well, the ransom note is a big one, right? Was it real?
Yeah.
Or was it some kind of elaborate distraction?
Right. And if it was staged, who would have the knowledge to do that and why?
It's so creepy, thinking about the Ramseys, reading that note, with all those specific instructions.
Yeah.
Like using a particular bag for the money.
Yeah, it's like the author was playing mind games with them, trying to control the situation, just amplifying their fear.
Totally. And then there's the question of who even had access to the house. Was it someone the family knew? Or did a complete stranger manage to get in without being noticed?
And with the crime scene being so compromised, it's almost impossible to know for sure who was there that night.
Exactly. And that lack of clear forensic evidence, on top of the mistakes made in the initial investigation, it just creates this vacuum. And that vacuum gets filled with speculation and all these different theories.
Oh, for sure. There's been no shortage of theories over the years, each with its own supporters and critics. But without solid evidence, the truth remains elusive.
It's almost like the more we learn about the case, the more questions we have. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I get it. It's the nature of unsolved mysteries. They get under our skin, and we can't help but try to make sense of them.
It's like they dare us to figure them out.
Right. We examine the evidence, we consider different perspectives, but ultimately we're wrestling with the unknown. And sometimes those answers just stay out of reach.
The article we're looking at, from Investor, mentions that over 1,000 DNA tests have been run on evidence from the Ramsey case.
1,000. It's incredible, right? All that effort and the mystery is still there.
It shows you how much this case continues to resonate, even today.
For sure. And it also makes you think about the advancements in forensic science and investigative techniques. I mean, things have come a long way since 1996.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. DNA analysis, crime scene investigation, it's all so different now.
Make you wonder, what if this happened today? With all the tools and knowledge we have now, would the outcome be different?
It's a really interesting question.
It's impossible to say for sure, of course.
Yeah.
But those advancements in forensic science, particularly DNA technology, they would definitely play a major role. I mean, think about it. We can extract DNA from the tiniest pieces of evidence now.
It's mind-blowing. It makes you wonder if some of those older cold cases, like this one, could be re-examined with fresh eyes and new technology.
Maybe, just maybe, it could lead to breakthroughs that we never thought possible before. It's kind of a hopeful thought, isn't it?
It is. I like that. So the Investor article also goes into the different theories that have been proposed over the years, trying to make sense of what happened to JonBenét. We're not going to get into those theories today, but it was fascinating to see how each one kind of illuminates a different angle of the case.
I agree. And it makes you think about different possibilities, maybe even question your own assumptions.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about these kinds of mysteries, right?
Yeah.
It's not always about finding the answer. It's about the exploration, the journey of trying to understand.
I like that, the journey of grappling with the unknown. It's something we all do in different ways, I think.
It's true. These cases, even though they're tragic, they can teach us a lot.
Absolutely. They show us how important vigilance is, the need for better investigative methods, and they make us think about the power of the media and how it can shape our perceptions of events.
It's weird. I remember watching the news coverage of this case when I was younger. It felt like everyone had a theory. It was all anyone could talk about.
Yeah, it became a cultural touchstone, didn't it? A real conversation starter, to say the least.
It really did. It's a good reminder that some stories, even the really tragic ones, they stick with us. long after the headlines fade away.
They make us think about human nature, about our search for truth and justice.
You know what's really struck me about this case? How much people are still talking about it, even after all these years.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
It just shows you the power of this mystery. It's like we can't let it go. We still want answers.
It speaks to something very human, I think. This need to understand, to make sense of the world around us, especially when something so tragic happens.
I agree. And it's almost like this case, with all its twists and turns and unanswered questions, it kind of forces us to confront the limits of what we can know.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that sometimes mysteries endure, even with all the effort we put into solving them.
And everyone sees it a little differently, right? I mean, it feels like this case has become a mirror, reflecting all our different biases and interpretations.
That's a good point. We all bring our own baggage to the table, so to speak. Our own experiences shape how we see the evidence and how we make sense of the different theories.
Exactly. And it forces us to ask some tough questions, doesn't it? About our own assumptions, about the possibility that there might be more than one right answer. That truth itself can be elusive, especially in a case like this.
Especially in a case like this. So much emotion, so much at stake.
And think about how much this case has permeated pop culture. Books, documentaries, even fictionalized accounts. It seems like everyone has a theory about what happened to JonBenét.
It's a testament to the power of the story. It's gripped the public imagination.
Absolutely. The JonBenét Ramsey case isn't just a crime story anymore. It's a cultural phenomenon. And it keeps us coming back to those fundamental questions of innocence and guilt, and the very nature of truth.
And sometimes that pursuit of truth can lead us down some pretty complicated paths.
Speaking of truth, I thought it was really important how the Investor article ended, by reminding us to remember JonBenét herself.
Absolutely. The victim, the little girl at the heart of all this.
It's so easy to get caught up in the details of the case, the forensics, the legal stuff, the different theories. We can't lose sight of the human cost of this tragedy.
A young life was lost, and a family was shattered. It's something we should never forget.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this sense of awe, the power of this mystery, and just how complex the human experience really is. What are your final thoughts for our listeners as they continue to think about this case?
I would say approach this case and any unsolved mystery with a healthy dose of skepticism, but also an open mind. Question everything. Think about the different perspectives. And remember, sometimes we never get those definitive answers.
Yeah, maybe that's okay.
Maybe that's okay. Maybe the journey of exploring the unknown is just as important as finding the destination. Who knows?
It's a good thought. The pursuit of truth is an ongoing process, even when we don't have all the answers. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive